Hi, I'm Marjorie Mankin, and I'm an artist and an instructor, and I love sharing the gift of art with a lot of people. Anybody. I had kids classes and senior classes, and just anyone that would like to know more about the creative process. I think what watercolor does is exciting, so that's my favorite right now. But I started in oils, and then I was able to learn some printmaking from Michi Osaka and Fumiko Kimura because they had a press. And that was exciting, so I learned how to do calligraph printmaking with cutting a plate out of some kind of, well, I used a lot of mat board to do it. And then when it's cut out, then as you run it through a press, it can emboss. And you never know quite what's going to happen at the end of the day. When you run it through the press, it comes out and it's exciting. So there's acrylics right now are pretty popular, so I have shared that with people, and I enjoy that because it does dry faster than oil paint. I've been teaching for many years now. I started when my kids were little and the kids didn't know what to do in the backyard. I had all the neighbor kids come over and we did some artwork and learning how to draw and see and the textures of the wood and just being aware. And accurate drawing is accurate seeing, so if you can show them the light and the darks and how the light hits the side of a tree and the bark and the textures, that makes it fun. It's, oh, I didn't see that. And so you kind of open a door of creativity that they didn't know they had. So I'm very happy about teaching. I started probably in the 60s and then began having classes at Fort Lewis and McCord, and kind of went farther in as I got into the gallery, a gallery row, which was a wonderful thing. I teach here, and I had children's classes on Saturdays and adult classes in the afternoon sometimes. So it's been well, I've been teaching for a long time. Good. We have a lot of interaction in the gallery, especially when we're having a class. Learning the technique of what the water does in the watercolor, how much water's on the paper, how much water's in your brush, and make a stroke and train on. Let it happen what happens. That's the fun of watercolor, don't you think?
And then you go,
so,
what a mess.
Oh no, you're doing it. You just need a little more dark. You're doing it. You're doing it. Good girl. I just love sharing what I've had so much fun doing all my life. So the sharing is just extra icing on the cake for me. And now, have you ever tried Yupo paper, which is a whole new thing? How the paint just sits on top of the paper and you pull the color off, and that's a fun way of doing another kind of art. And then collage, don't forget that. That's always fun to have. I just did a seascape that I added a little bit of collage in the foreground of the grasses and stuff, and so it just made a little texture. Texture's a fun thing part of a good design. I'm trying to teach everybody how to put a painting together, not just make a cute little painting. So, acrylic with a little bit of rice paper for texture in the foreground. So I think kind of makes it kind of fun and interesting. And I like that. And the Yupo paper is above, and that's one where the paint is put on very heavily. You can't use so much water because it just sits on top, and then you pull off the colors that or the objects that you want, like the lily and so forth. It's kind of fun, huh? Okay, well, I love birch trees, and the birch bark has so much wonderful texture and personality. picked it up and I thought, well, I'll make that be the main thing. But then I had started with the acrylics above and tried to get a little bit of background of a birch grove. And but how the paper birch loses is just peels off. It's just so much fun. Look at the values in it, how it comes through. Just cast shadows and it makes it be just in itself a painting. Isn't it fun? And I've always liked textures, so that kind of looks heavy, but I think that says how I feel about birch bark and birch trees. This is a holograph print that is carved from a plate, carved out. And so the carving, when you lay it down and run and roll color over it, anything that's carved out will stay white. And then it's pressed on the bed of a press, laid on a bed of a press, and then it's pressed so that anything will be, that is carved out will be embossed. So I love to see the flowers that are growing in the ditches. These are the little wild iris. I'm not sure what's below the water, but no, neither is anybody. So I made sort of a little of what I thought the bulb might look like. And then one day I was in a frame shop, and these little pieces were laying on the floor, and I said, "Are you going to throw those away?" And so I used those. I picked them up and used these as to make your eye flow across. So just using a press. This is what do you call that? Rice paper with a little bit of alcohol dripped on it to give it a little texture. So there's many ways that you can do printmaking, and I like holograph printmaking because not only can you carve out, you get the embossment, but you can also glue things onto the plate. So when it's put down on the bed of the press and pressed through, you'll have texture as well. So it makes it kind of exciting when you pick up the paper and say, "Oh man, look what it did." I like to paint the woodsy things around us, probably ferns and moss and the different colors of moss and how there's so many shades of the ferns as they grow, and probably that's my very best thing. But I love trees, and so the greens of the Pacific Northwest are my favorite thing to paint. So I'm painting a little bit of the different kind of greens that I see way off in the background. And I love birch trees. So birch trees are a favorite thing. Here's one little guy that I liked. Put some color down. Let's see, we'll put a little bit of brown and a little bit of yellow, maybe, yellowish color. A little bit of the other reddish tone. Okay, then use a little piece of mat board to use it as a brush and to get the feeling of, whoops, I didn't get quite enough, just a minute. We'll get a little more paint in here. I don't know where my brown is. And I think that the texture of the bark on a tree is so exciting, and each tree has its own personality, and I feel that the shadows on the bark. Okay, so we'll try it again and see if I get enough paint this time. Okay, so we're going to just make a little bit of a feel of there, a little bit on the cool side with a lavender purpley color, and then where the light is hitting, then it's more warm, so can't get it very much here. I'm not getting enough. There you go. A little bit. So we have a warm side, which will be, oops. I left my palette at home, which you know, so I'm using this. So the warm side of the tree can have a little bit of warm color in places, as opposed to the cool side. And don't forget to leave some white when you're doing watercolor, right? Leave the white of the paper. So, and then we think we can't paint snow, so you have to paint the shadows in the snow. So the shadows reflect the sky, so they're blue. And I use my finger a lot. Just to kind of, so there's a little hill, so I'm going to paint the shadow behind the hill. And then the shadows coming through across. How about wetting it a little over here and putting a shadow of cool? Could have some warm in it. I'm doing it quite lightly, but I can come back and put more later. Painting is like going on a vacation. You can just lose yourself. You can lose yourself in what you're doing. You have the ability to choose what color you want and where you want to go with it, and it makes me feel happy. It makes me feel relaxed and thankful that I have this creative ability. I remember, I think it was Da Vinci that said the creative urge is divine madness, and I think it is.